It is 8:41 Newstalk Sauga 960 Raw. Mike Richards along with David Bastl, and we're thrilled as our very good friend Chris from the Idea Shop.ca has brought us over the last year or so, 2 years, where we have these interesting books in a show where for most of our career we covered sports. Usually it's about someone who played hockey, who robbed a bank, has 18 wives. It's a football story of a guy who, there are these stories that we get and these books that sort of fall into this category. Chris has pushed us into all different directions, but the book that we talked about outside is something that it was really sort of groundbreaking in the response that people had to the book. And so we go to Chris Houston right now and say, good morning, first of all, to Chris from the Idea Shop. And boy, oh boy, I'll tell you, this book it's got a life of its own, doesn't it?
It does, Mike. And, I'm glad it got such a great reaction when we talked about it last week. It's always a good sign if you can't get a hold of the copy of your book because other people have taken it. That is its own accolade. It's always one of the things about summer. Ever since I was a kid, there's always that book that you remembered summer by. What summer was that? I don't know, but I know what book I read, And Sean McCammon's book, Outside, is clearly that book. I've now read a couple of books since Sean. No offense to the other books. They were great and I loved reading them. But the one I keep returning to in my mind is Sean's book, Outside. And it's published by our friends out in BC, New Star Books. And I am delighted that it has had such a great reception on the show that I'm actually thrilled to introduce to you. We have today with us the author of Outside, Mr. Sean McCammon. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you certainly have made an impact with this book. I was kind of stunned that it is your first book, but everyone's process is different. When you talk to people who are either authors or I'll be honest, musicians, like where do lyrics come from? Like, how do you come up with them? Everyone's process is a little bit different and it arrives at different times in different people's lives. It doesn't necessarily start at the beginning, sometimes middle, end. The process is always different. So Sean, your background, so you actually are a teacher. You have spent time in Japan. There are elements that you will see in the book, but I'm just curious, at what point in your life do you think, because I know you delve into music, I know you have that side to you. You certainly in literary. I mean, you got a bookstore. So when do you think, in your mind, does the start of this book kind of happen in your head?
Well, I taught English in Japan in the early '90s, and sometime after that experience, I got the idea for this book, and that's probably 25 years ago now. And so I started with the end in mind. I'd pictured how the book would end. And really the process for me was just building in all that backstory of how we get to this climactic scene event. So, and that's, for me, that's the way to go. I read that, Stephen King sits down, he starts typing, and he doesn't really know where his story's going to go, but I have to start with the end in mind. Yeah.
Okay, so you start off with the end in mind. You had this idea many, many years ago. When thoughts go to that computer and you're typing away, you're figuring this out, what's the stop and start like as far as how many years this takes or how many months or how many weeks? Like I don't know writing style. So because some people could do it like this, and some people, as you know, it's a little bit of a grind, and sometimes it takes some time. What was that like for you?
Yeah, well, I've never written a novel before.
Yeah.
I'd never, this wasn't really on my radar. I thought of the idea, but I had a lot of other artistic projects that were kind of laying around. Like I'm in a band and we had a CD, and I've got other like solo projects, music-wise, and so. I'd never just come home from work and think, oh, I'm going to sit in the basement and write my novel. So about, I'm going to say now, 7 years ago, I got 6 months off work. And I had in my head, I'm going to work on these musical projects. And I had 6 things on a list of things I was going to work on during this little sabbatical. And at the bottom was start novel. and I never really thought I'd get to that. I never thought I'd make it to number 6. But one day I just sat down on a recliner and I started typing, and at the end of the day, I didn't hate the process. It wasn't homework to me. It wasn't painful, and so I did it the next day. And so I pumped out, probably just in the last month of my sabbatical, I probably pumped out 15,000 words, and the novel in the end product is 90,000. So, and then I went back to work, and it kind of sat there. And then I took 6 months off again 4 years ago, and that was my thing. I sat in a chair, and I tried to shoot out 1,000 words a day for 5 hours. I'd sit in the chair for 5 hours, and I'd hope, at the end of the day, hopefully I've got 1,000 words. And so I had to sit in that chair for 90 days, and I didn't really realize how lonely a life writers lead, but it's a process, yeah.
Well, Sean, because it's funny in talking about this book, because it's like giving away parts of a series that you've seen that someone else hasn't started watching yet. So you don't want to give away the key points. But what I wondered in your process, as you said, you think about the end first, but there are elements of it that obviously mirror things that you have experienced in your life, both as the teacher, both as your philosophy of taking kids outside, education via being outdoors, which is always, I think, spectacular. Japan, obviously an element of Japan, which, is, you probably wouldn't think is coming when you look at the actual cover of the book. You would have no idea. But in that, where there is something, like a lot of books, there's something that's tragic is going to happen. So you have to juggle in your mind, I suppose, what reality was and is for you, and then something terrible. So how does that happen? How do you get to that point? You go, okay, I have a nice life. I've done this. Oh, it'd be weird. Or, it would be horrible. How do you even sort of emotionally and balance at the same time intellectually get that on paper somehow?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, my favorite author is Kurt Vonnegut, and Kurt Vonnegut said at one point, a good writer has to kind of be a sadist, that you need to take a likable character and put them through the grinder and see what comes out the other side. And you can't really be friends with your characters. As much as you like these people, it's not going to be much of a story if they go to the store and they walk their dog. And so, yeah, you got to put them through the grind. And I think, that's kind of what people relate to in this book, is that, the main character in this book, he's a good guy. He tries to do the right thing. He's an upstanding citizen. And, regardless of how good you are in life, however you prepare for life, at some point, life is going to knock you on the arse. And I think what people really relate to in the book is just, getting back up. That how do you get back up from something, really harsh? And so, I know in my life I'm dealing with, I teach outdoor education programs to students in the school board. So I've got them outside. I've got risk management on my mind, a lot of that stuff. And, that certainly plays a part in the book. And, it can't be all rainbows and puppies. And you gotta go down that road, however hard that might be.
Sean, the reaction from our audience on your book has been tremendous. Mike's told you a couple different stories about how he hasn't been able to read it. My mother actually has my copy of the book because she heard from friends about your book. So, I mean, what sort of reactions personally are you getting on novel number 1? And is there a foundation of something that could be coming up in novel number 2, or does novel number 2 exist, or not even a thought process right now?
Yeah, so, reaction has been, great. When I wrote the book, like, I gave, my wife had read it and a few neighbors and friends, and they say, "Oh, Sean, that's a good book." You don't trust them, right? You don't think, well, okay. Yeah, my wife liked the book, great. But then there was an editor in town that I signed up for a newsletter from, and I sent the book to her, and she sent me back a note saying, this is one of the top 2 things I've ever edited. And she's been in the literary game a long time. And so that's kind of when I thought, all right, maybe I am onto something here.
Sure.
And so when the book comes out, because I'm an unknown author, first-time novel, it's not bestseller. And it's one of these slow burn things, right? That somebody reads it and they give it to somebody else. And then, you're on Mike Richards' show. And, that's just kind of how things percolate here. And as far as the second novel goes, I have started a second novel. It is totally unrelated to the first novel. I've pictured the ending. I've got how it all ends, and I just need to sit in a chair for 90 days and pump it out.
Well, when the movie comes out, can I be the teacher, or can I be someone in it? I just want to be in a movie. I really.
There's a reverend in there. You might
I could be
a
that.
Reverend, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sean, one thing that's great about the book is this character, David Woods. He's so relatable. As you said, he's a really good guy. And one of the charming parts of it is he's living in a small town. He goes from like a biggish town to a smaller town. He's living in that small town. And when you talk about the editor in your town that helped, and the community, and the education you do with obviously people around. One thing I got to mention is your local bookstore. As much as David passing the book off to his family, and Mike having the book stolen out from under him by his family, having a good bookstore behind you is key. And Wordsworth Bookshop, who are in Waterloo on King Street, they've been around for over 30 years. They're very reputable bookstore. From what I understand, Sean, they've been very supportive of your book and your writing.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I tend to, if somebody asks me where can I pick it up, I want to support the local small bookshop as much as possible. And so, instead of Amazon, I generally direct them there. But if you're looking for the book, it is available anywhere. Type it in.
Well, go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, well, no, I was just going to go a side topic here, because I know Chris Houston gave us some really good notes. When you throw AC/DC at us, you got to tell us at least what your favorite lick is from AC/DC, because they have a catalog of, well, what looks like novels of great songs. So which number one in your eyes?
Well, you can't go wrong with, the whole Back in Black album is
Killer.
Yeah.
The best of all time.
Yeah, I quoted some lyrics from AC/DC in the book, and they wanted $200 to use. She was a fast machine. She kept her motor clean.
The band wanted they wanted $200 measly for that. Seriously?
Yeah, well, and there's a guy in the book who sings like classic rock songs and is teaching his students English by using classic rock lyrics. And so I dropped in a whole bunch, and so they were like, "What do you want to do? Do you want to pay $200 7 times, or do you want to, write around this kind of thing?" And so I changed things up, but in the end, I was thinking, it would have been worth $200 to get sued by AC/DC or get a cease and desist letter from Angus Young or something. That'd be worth $200.
Yeah,
Shrewd marketing.
being sued by guys who wear short pants. I mean, that's something. That'd be pretty good. I can go with that. Sean, wonderful meeting you, and congratulations on all your success. And because it's not done. I mean, this book, as you said, this is like a slow burn. This thing's going to keep going, and it's still, I mean, it's got legs, right? So I'm thrilled for that. I'm really excited that there's going to be another piece coming from you. And look, it's not easy, right? You sit down, you think you have an idea, and it's a creative process. It's like writing a song, and you play it for someone, or you play it for someone close, and they're like, yeah, you're not sure what that reaction is going to be. So it's great when people hear it or see it or read it and think, okay, this is really good stuff. You're really onto something here. I mean, it must feel great. And we love to see our successes, certainly here locally and here in Canada, which you have done. So as I said, it's been wonderful meeting you here this morning, and look for more works from Sean McCammon. And as we just don't fall in love too much with the characters, because it's kind of like Game of Thrones. Oh, I really like that king. Whoa, what happened to his head? That's what happened. So Sean, thanks so much for this morning. I hope we'll get a chance to talk to you again sometime.
Great, thank you very much.
Sean McCammon, of course, Chris from the Idea Shop always brings us the best stuff, as he did once again here this morning.